Мне очень непросто сейчас записывать это видео, и трудно говорить об этой ситуации, но я искренне хочу поблагодарить всех тех, кто переживал и принимал участие в моих поисках. Спасибо спасателям, поисковым службам, волонтерам, водолазам. Спасибо моим коллегам-фигуристам и болельщикам. И, конечно, большое спасибо моим родным и близким людям. Извините, что заставила вас переживать. Только сейчас я понимаю, что на самом деле произошло, что мой поступок совершенно не вписывается в понятие «нормально». Ведь пока я переживала, пыталась разобраться в себе, в своих мыслях и чувствах, вы все тратили время и силы на мои поиски. Большое спасибо за вашу любовь.
Hello and welcome to another edition of As the Blade Turns. My name is Dave Leese, and for those of you who are new here, please subscribe below and remember to smash that like button. I wanted to give an update about Alina Gorbacheva, the 16-year-old figure skater who ran away earlier this week and was then found by Moscow police. She has since apologized 3 times. Russian figure skating champion Alina Gorbacheva spoke about the attitude of coaches towards her. Firstly, I have never been beaten or humiliated by my coaches. Secondly, my mother never came to the training camp, and even in the last 3 years, she never came to training. So, even if she really wanted to ask my coaches for something, physically, she would not be able to do it, the 16-year-old figure skater said in a video for the Telegram channel. Does her mother not have a cell phone? Does she not have email? Can't she text? Only in Russia. Figure skating Alina Gorbacheva recorded a message about the search for her in Moscow. And I am going to read part of that transcript right now. 16-year-old Gorbacheva is the champion of Russia among juniors. On August 28th, the figure skater disappeared in Moscow. The police found her the next day in one of the capital cinemas. It is very difficult for me to record this video right now, and it is difficult to talk about this situation. But I sincerely want to thank all those who worried and took part in my search. Thanks to rescuers, search services, volunteers, divers. Thanks to my fellow skaters and fans, and of course many thanks to my family and friends. Sorry for making you worry. Only now I understand what really happened, that my act does not fit into the concept of normal at all. After all, while I was worried, trying to understand myself, my thoughts and feelings, you all spent time and effort searching for me. Thank you very much for your love, Gorbacheva said. Note that there is no discussion about how she is doing or what led her to do this act. Tatiana Tarasova believes that Alina Gorbacheva does not need to drive the media. My act has nothing to do with figure skating, but with the coach. Everything is fine with us. Do not believe the media and would-be bloggers, the figure skater wrote about her escape. Tarasova said, she just needs to apologize and nothing more. No need to bully anyone. I consider it a big plus that the media immediately reacted. Everyone worried about her those 2 terrible days. Journalists wrote about this only in order to find Alina. Well, a psychologist expressed her opinion about the situation of the escaped figure skater, Alina Gorbacheva. She said, athletes live in tougher conditions than we do. It's hard for a child, especially for a child who is taken away from their family at the age of 9. I personally am not sure that she wanted it. She was asked. Alina herself in an interview said that the relationship with her mother was not developing very correctly, but she put up with it. She also said that she was very fond of the coach, Sofia Fedchenko, and she herself wanted to live with her. But you see, a difficult situation. She had several significant adults in her childhood, conditionally. Mom, dad, grandmother. She was taken away from them, and she stopped communicating with them. This is a psychological trauma. I wonder what Alina would say about this, not in an interview, but in a conversation with a psychologist. I don't know how normal the situation is for sports. In a global sense, you can't call it typical, but in figure skating, there are situations where an athlete lives with a coach. She responds, but they still keep in touch with their parents. And here, not only was the child torn away from significant adults at the age of 9, but they were also forbidden to communicate with them, according to the words of the grandmother. The child simply ended up in another family, one might say, and continued to live with a foster mother. Alina had to adapt to inhuman conditions, constant training, monotonous life. Of course, this affects the psyche of the child. The interviewer continues, "It turns out that after such a breakdown, Alina cannot do without the help of a psychologist?" The psychologist replied, "I think that when a child is taken away from the family, she needs constant help from a psychologist. For example, for sports, this is an acceptable situation when a child lives with a coach, but you still need to constantly monitor their condition." The interviewer continues, "Often, athletes in personal forms have a coach, and dad, and mom, and friend, and a psychologist." "Well, that's the problem. The coach isolated the girl, but she needs support. A place where she can speak out, say everything she thinks. Even if Alina is not going to leave the sport, she still needs to let off steam. Constant work with a psychologist is simply necessary for her. I repeat, she was needed initially when she was sent to live with a coach at the age of 9. Said Daria Yurema. Journalist and Olympic champion Alina Gorbacheva spoke about the situation with Alina Gorbacheva. "The bad is always more readily believed than the good. So in the inner circles of figure skating yesterday, they discussed different things. Tough coaching methods, violence and beating from parents, injuries and hunger strikes leading to anorexia. When I called one of the parents, whose daughter often found herself on the same ice with Alina, my interlocutor, without even waiting for the question, said, 'They say, sorry for the girl. She just ended up in a trap.' Like, the mother left her upbringing at the mercy of the coach. She, in a purely coaching way, pressed the ward for any reason, which everyone who was at the rink had the opportunity to observe. And when the athlete was given the task of showing quadruple jumps, which did not work out very well, at the test skates, pressure on the part of the coach had increased many times. I will not claim that everything said really took place in relation to Gorbacheva, but the scheme in which parents not only put up with a tough attitude towards a child, but also encourage them in every possible way, is far from new in figure skating. Moreover, she actually unties the coach's hands. Perhaps the reason for the breakdown of the 16-year-old skater was not at all in the reasons listed above, although it is very likely that they are. At a professional working level, an athlete does not suddenly leave training if there was no reason. This is an axiom. So the conflict with the coach still took place, and Alina's words about weariness from everything are also indicative. But I personally am not ready to transfer all arrows to Sofia Fichenko now. It's more the system's fault. Big sport in any of its manifestations is pain, fear, constant overcoming of oneself, and training violence as well. It's just that an adult chooses this path consciously, clearly understanding what and why he goes for the sake of the result, and others make the choice for the children. There are many examples when a child hates with all the fibers of their soul what they are forced to do in the same of figure skating, and then everything works as a rule according to the same scheme. The entry lists for the Russian test skates have been released, and Anna Shcherbakova and Alexandra Trusova's names are absent from the lists. Yesterday, it was announced that Alexandra Trusova is suspending her career. Irina Rodina does not believe in the return of Anna Shcherbakova to competition. Recently, Shcherbakova was shown restoring her triples in China. According to Rodina, demonstration performances and shows are an absolutely normal practice for athletes who have left the sport of high achievements. I don't believe in Shcherbakova's return to real competitions. The girl achieved the main thing, Olympic gold. And after such achievements, it is not now customary to perform further. Tatiana Tarasova believes that Anna Shcherbakova should not be expected at competition. An interviewer asked her, is there any hope to see Shcherbakova in the upcoming competitive season, given her absence from the list of the test skates of the national team? According to Tarasova, if she is not on the list, then why wait for her? They then asked, would you like to see her in the competitive season? Yes, I would like to. She's an excellent skater, said Tarasova. Figure skater Alexandra Trusova thought about ending her career back in the spring. It was reported by Match TV, citing a source. Contractual obligations to sponsors may become a deterrent from an official statement. Today, Sport Express announced that the silver medalist of the 2022 Olympics does not plan to compete in the 2023-24 season. Elena Berezhnaya spoke about skipping test skates by Alexandra Trusova. Of course, Trusova is an important figure, and everyone is interested in her skating. Everyone is interested in following her. Surely she had reasons to decide so, to do so. It's not just that it's all, but she had a lot of fans who would love to watch her. They asked, how can you restore her motivation without international competitions? Berezhnaya, only a good salary. And so we can only fantasize what she needs at all. Can we say that Trusova ended her career with such a decision? It is not a fact. Many skip the season and then come back, so let's see. But at the moment, she is one of the top 3 skaters in Russia, said the Olympic champion. Alexandra Trusova plans to create an ice show. According to Match TV, Trusova is developing her own tour. Trusova will not perform in the test skates at the Russian national team in September. Alexei Avdokhin wrote a column, "It is now open season against Trusova." Alexandra Trusova is not going to participate in the competitions of the new season. Yesterday's news even briefly overshadowed the disappearance of Alina Gorbacheva. Trusova said, I was thinking about ending my career back in the spring. I reduced my training activity. Among the reasons are lack of motivation, controversial refereeing, state of health, and employment in the show. Wording behind which the obvious result is hidden for a long time. Trusova has no reason to linger in figure skating. And in general, did at least someone believe that Trusova would continue? You remember her last season, painfully powerless, with disappearing jumps, lags on a quadruple Lutz, and diagnoses, for some reason, compatible only with the show. Was there at least something optimistic then that would make Sasha stay in the sport? Was last year's figure able to cross out that complex, I hate this sport, that had been accumulating for a long time and bursting out in Beijing? Entering the season for a 19-year-old figure skater is not so much about motivation, evil judges, difficult training, and self-restraint. First of all, this is self-acceptance, when you can no longer skate, and in the case of Trusova, jump, as before. And all that remains is to skate as best you can, or not skate at all. Trusova, without 5 quadruples, is such a figure skater interesting to anyone? And most importantly, does she need herself without jumping? But what about the Russian rocket? And since this paragraph consists of some questions, another one from the classic, where are your wings that I liked? Sorry, Sasha, but this is not about your song. In the case of our female figure skaters, there have not been any figure skaters who have overcome puberty for a long time. In fact, not a single one after Tuktamisheva. Trusova, for example, was 18, was the second in the list of the oldest figure skaters last season. Now Ksenia Sinitsina and Anna Frolova will become seniors, if of course they endure. This is generally an abnormally complex topic. Why is it so in Russia but not in the world? And at the last World Championships, 3 figure skaters from the top 5 were decently over 20. But let's try to invest at least a few reasons why Trusova remains in competitive skating. Alyona Kosternaya, for example, skates for fun next to her husband, and it seems even gets high. Valyeva has something like an alibi, so that the disappearance from the sport during the doping investigation is not considered extra evidence. It probably makes no sense to talk about Shcherbakova. We are now talking about acting figure skaters. But why Trusova? Why does she need all these velvet seasons, Volga pirouettes, and other creative names from the Russian Figure Skating Federation? Does she need to again lose by 25 points to Akacheva, Petrosian, and those who will appear after them? Does she repeat the Lutz over and over again, the only one of the remaining quadruples she has, until she succeeds? What if it's never? Should she be looking for a coach again when being with Sokolovskaya loses its last meeting? Should she wait for the next fan to jump over the boards with a bouquet of flowers? Should she set a program to her own song? After all, there are no external incentives either. Even for advertising contracts, it is not necessary to perform in Omsk or Samara. It's a banal fact, but our figure officials have never come up with anything that would force top skaters to choose competitions over shows. And there, Navka, Plushenka, Averbuk, of course, it is both easier and more profitable in terms of the workload, organization, requirements, and of course, money. But in the case of Trusova, the show is the most secondary factor. Unfortunately, her career ended much earlier than yesterday's news, at the moment when she lost her jumps and realized that it was irreversible. No one is to blame for this. Neither she nor her coaches. It just happens to teenagers. Hormones, puberty, metabolic syndrome. There are enough suitable terms in a textbook on sports physiology. Of course, there will be no official announcement about the end of a career. It's time to get used to the fact that in our figure skating, this is not accepted almost officially. This is probably even correct. A kaleidoscope of 18-year-old athletes announcing their career finals would have hammered on the reputation of this sport more than teenage tantrums, runaways from home, doping cases, anorexia, and other manifestations. It's easier to assume that the careers of our skaters are endless. Let's allow this in Trusova to interrupt training in order to stay in figure skating forever. Well, also absent from the list are Evgenia Tarasova and Vladimir Morozov. Tatiana Tarasova believes that Evgenia Tarasova and Vladimir Morozov have problems. By this, she explained the absence of a couple in the list of participants in the test skates of the Russian national team. Not surprised by this. I think they have some problems they are solving now. It seems to me that yes, they realize themselves, but it's not about age, said the coach. The test skates will be held on September 16th and 17th in Moscow. Tarasov and Morozov have long been expected to retire. They were also present at Putin's initial rally for the war, which could potentially bar them from ever returning to international competition. Well, perhaps the most talented ice dance team in Russia since Ilinik and Katsalapov has split. In the case of Ilinik and Katsalapov, that potential was ruined by the black mark of Nikolai Morozov. But the situation of Kaganovskaya and Angelopol is rather different. The dance couple Vasilisa Kaganovskaya and Valeri Angelopol broke up. This was reported by the press service of the Russian Figure Skating Federation. By mutual decision, the couple ended their creative union. The message says, Kaganovskaya and Angelopol are winners of the Russian Grand Prix final of 2023, winners and prize winners of the Junior Grand Prix stages, winners and prize winners of the Russian Grand Prix stages. Alina Gorbacheva spoke about the breakup of the dance couple. The day before, the press service of the FFKR published a list of participants in the test skates of the Russian national team, which included the names of Kaganovskaya and Angelopol. Vasilisa and Valeri today informed us of their decision to no longer perform together. They dispersed by mutual agreement and by our decision, said Shcherbakova. Well, Yelena Vaitsekhovskaya, the journalist and Olympic champion, spoke sharply about the figure skater Valeri Angelopol. Today it became known that the dance duet of Angelopol with Vasilisa Kaganovskaya broke up. In the 2022-23 season, they won the Russian Grand Prix final. From the very departure of Angelika Krylova to America, when she flew there to take her daughter to the university campus, I watched with interest the activity of Valeri Angelopol in Telegram. Sometimes, to be honest, it was tempting to ask directly, "Boy, do you even train or what?" Now it is clear that, or how. No matter how attractive commercial projects for the production of their own merchandise may look, they do not behave this way with a serious sports intentions. And what kind of merch can there be when you are essentially a no-name, even a very talented no-name? And everything looks as if a person simply ran away from competition and the fear of losing, the journalist wrote in her Telegram channel. Well, Valeri Angelopol spoke about the breakup with Vasilisa Kaganovskaya. Never, and no comments, I will not say in my life about this situation. As a peasant, I am no longer obliged to leave rubbish in the hut. If If my former coach or former partner want to speak out, it's their choice. I will keep silent. All the best to everyone. Sincerely, said Angelopol. Well, it was reported that Vasilisa Kaganovskaya and Valeri Angelopol had disagreements for a long time. This was reported by journalist Alina Gorbacheva in her Telegram channel, citing a source familiar with the situation. Today it became known that the dance duo broke up. According to a source close to the Krylova group, disagreements between Angelopol and his partner took place for quite some time, and Angelika Krylova sometimes had to make truly titanic efforts to save the duet. Perhaps the coach was simply tired of being an educator, especially after the group included adults, long-term athletes, Annabel Morozov and Igor Eremenko. Left to their own devices, Angelopol and Kaganovskaya simply stopped coping with the situation, Vaitsohovskaya wrote. Well, Vasilisa Kaganovskaya spoke about the breakup of her duet with Valeri Angelopol. Dear friends, as you have already seen, our couple no longer exists. It's true, it's not fake, and I want to tell you the truth. I have never endured a quarrel in public, but now I will not be silent. It all started on July 4th. Valeri told me that he did not want to skate with me. I know the reason very well. He told it to his friend and my mother, and she had nothing to do with figure skating. It was, to put it bluntly, personal. I won't go into details because I don't think it's right. But the next day he changed his mind and started saying that he didn't want to skate because he didn't like the way I was training. He told me that I was beating him, that I didn't work well, that I treated him terribly, and so on. Angelika Alexeyevna and I did everything to keep the couple together, and for a while it worked out. We discussed everything and prepared all this time for the test skates. But 3 days ago, Valeri brought a contract to the training and said that if I didn't sign it before September 1st, then he wouldn't skate with me. A contract that I must take him on full support. You can see the content for yourself. I attached a photo. We tried to talk. Angelika Alexeyevna offered other different solutions, but Valeri said that this was his condition, and only in this way he would, stepping over himself, skate with me in a pair. Neither I nor my family nor my coach, no one was going to work on such conditions. That's why we don't skate together anymore. And this is not a mutual decision, but only Valeri's decision. But I am grateful for these 5 years. There were many good moments and victories. I have learned a lot over the years, and I'm moving on. I love what I do and am full of motivation to continue skating, but with another person. Thanks to all the fans for their support, the figure skater wrote. Angelika Krylova, the coach of Vasilisa Kaganovskaya and Valeri Angelopol, explained the breakup of the duet. Vasilisa and Valeri no longer skate together. Yes, the guys had conflicts in the summer, but we settled them, and now there didn't seem to be any prerequisites. We were actively preparing for the rentals. But this is how it happened. It was Valerino's decision. As a coach, I completely disagree with him. On my part, many different attempts were made to save the duet. Valeri will not skate in my group anymore. Vasilisa remains to skate in my group and is currently looking for a partner. I ask the press not to bother me now, wrote coach Angelika Krylova. Irina Rodina believes that there is nothing absurd in the contract of Valeri Angelopol. Kaganovskaya herself said that the partner offered a contract that she could take Angelopol for full support. There is a practice with such contracts in the West. There is nothing absurd in this. In the West, everyone pays if you want to skate with me in pairs. I don't have the opportunity to pay for ice and the work of a coach, said the 3-time Olympic champion. So it looks like Kaganovskaya would have had to support Angelopol fully, financially. Gorbacheva supported Kaganovskaya after the breakup of the duet with Angelopol. I really want to support Vasilisa and wish good luck to Valeri. Sincerely, as a colleague and competitor, they are one of the brightest duets in recent years. It's sad. Figure skating in the off-season is just glass. Vasilisa, you are a very strong girl, wrote the Russian ice dance champion, Elizaveta Gorbacheva. Silver medalist of the 2020 World Junior Champions Daria Usashova wished good luck to figure skater Vasilisa Kaganovskaya. Vasha, everything will be fine with you. Good luck, Usashova wrote. European champion Sergei Nowitzki spoke about the reasons of the collapse of the duet of Kaganovskaya and Angelopol. I am very surprised that the guys took such a step. I can only complain that we have lost an original, bright couple. You can think anything about the reasons, but the reality sometimes turns out to be completely different. There are many options. For example, mutual misunderstanding of each other's work, different approaches to the training process, different views on what they do. This could serve as a point. People realized that they didn't want to work together anymore. These events do not happen all at once. This means that problems have been accumulating for a long time, and now there has been a breakdown, said the 2009 European champion in ice dancing, Sergei Nowitzki. Up until now, the fellow ice dancers have really been rather complimentary about both Kaganovskaya and Angelopol. Well, the Russian gaslighting committee went to task, and they took him out. Tatiana Tarasova spoke about the breakup of Vasilisa Kaganovskaya and Valeri Angelopol. I don't react at all. For whom did they show great promise? For me? No. If they had served, they would not have broken up. Alexander Svinin does not consider the skaters Kaganovskaya and Angelopol to be a star couple. Honestly, it is difficult to say why this happened. Here, questions should be asked to their coach. But believe me, in the entire history of figure skating, a huge number of dance duets have diverged. Therefore, they are not the first, they are not the last. And then Kaganovskaya and Angelopol are not some stars to lament about this. Nevertheless, this is a fairly good pair, which showed good results last season. But before starting a new one, they suddenly decided to take such a step. Now both will be different. Of course, such events do not benefit the athletes, said figure skating coach Alexander Svinin. Novka believes that Kaganovskaya and Angelopol could become the strongest in Russia. I confess that I was very disappointed when I found out about the breakup of this duet. The couple was beautiful and showed great promise. I think they had all the prerequisites to compete for the title of the strongest in Russia. Beautiful, young, strong, insanely promising. But apparently the guys have their own reasons. I'm not going to judge them. It remains only to observe the further fate of Kaganovskaya and Angelopol. I repeat, I'm terribly sorry, but we do not know the whole inner workings in the situation. I would like to wish Valeri and Vasilisa continue towards their dream, despite what happened. I hope we will see both again, said the 2006 Olympic champion in ice dancing, Tatiana Novka. Well, it is definitely true that in the meantime, Annabel Morozov and Igor Eremenko have lost a sparring partner. They are currently the top duet for Angelika Krylova, as the blade turns. But Valeri Angelopol was reported today that it was potentially promising that he could team up with Polina Usova. Today it became known that Angelopol will no longer skate with Vasilisa Kaganovskaya. According to Sport Express, Polina Usova may become Angelopol's new partner. Usova is 16 years old, paired with Mikhail Antonov. She took 9th place at the 2023 Russian Championships. It's reported that Angelopol and Usova have a close relationship. Valeri published a joint photo with Usova on social networks a week ago. Signing it, let's face the truth. Figure skater Polina Usova denied that Valeri Angelopol would become her partner. Everything they write is not true. At the moment, I'm skating with Mikhail Antonov, and I'm not going to part ways with him. I will not comment on my personal life. Besmiana believes that the figure skaters Kaganovskaya and Angelopol have become stars. They haven't really done anything yet, but they have already become a star. Instead of working, they began to sort things out. They have brilliant directors, an excellent coach, but they still have to work and work. They thought that everything was fine. This has been going on for a long time. They converged, then diverged. I've been hearing about this for months now. Things that don't end well. Someone believes that the couple rests on him. Someone what is on her. They overpraise them. Plus, a couple arrived, which is on the same ice with them. Everything follows from the other, said 1988 Olympic champion Natalia Besmianova. Hockey star Alexander Ovechkin appeared on Tatiana Navka's show on Channel 1. Alexander Ovechkin called the Olympic medal one of his goals in his career. Navka asked, "I'm sure that you have dreamed of an Olympic medal since childhood. Are you resigned that you will not win one?" "I'm not that resigned. Of course, it's a shame. Some guys who dreamed about the Olympics never even went to because of the whole situation. And doping and the one that is happening now. We were simply taken aside and not given the opportunity. Although they say that sport is out of politics, it turned out that the opposite is true. Of course, it's a shame, both for myself and for the people who are sick, worried, and want to see us at the Olympic Games. And in the 18th year, the NHL did not agree with the Olympic Committee. It's all money. They don't care about us. The most important thing is that they get some interest. Although we were told that we were 100% going, they announced a month before that there was no agreement." Well, maybe you want to become a coach of Olympic champions. The Olympic medal is one of the main goals of my life, has been and will be. But I don't know about coaching, said Washington Capitals forward Alexander Ovechkin. It's very interesting that Ovechkin is being very patriotic now, as Ovechkin plays for commercially in the United States rather than playing in Russia. Earlier today, it was announced that the former head of the National Olympic Committee of Ukraine, Sergei Bubka, and his brother, Vasilisa Bubka, were entered in the register of traitors for cooperation with the occupiers. Now, it's important to note that previously Sergei Bubka had supported a Ukrainian boycott of the 2024 Olympic Games. Bubka is friends and business partners with Olympic champion Viktor Petrenko. Now, it is noted that one of the companies that is registered to Bubka receives contracts from the Russians and the temporarily occupied territories and sells fuel. This became known through an investigation by journalist Maria Zemlyanskaya. The business, whose owners are still listed as Sergei Bubka, continues to work in the temporarily occupied Donetsk, where, according to the athlete herself, he left his mother and older brother. Thus, Montblanc firm LLC was included in Russian registers with one difference from Ukrainian information. The mother was removed from the co-founders, but Sergei Bubka and his brother Vasily remained. In 2023, Montblanc began to participate in Russian tenders. They found 3 tenders for fuel supply. Bubka himself did not react to the investigation in any way. The SBU launched a pretrial investigation into the ties of Sergei Bubka's company with the Russian Federation. Investigators are studying the issue. There were deliberate actions on the part of the founders and representatives of Firma Montblanc LLC aimed at helping the aggressor country in order to cause harm to Ukraine. In the course of working out the information given in the above-mentioned journalistic investigation, it was established that the economic entities controlled by Sergei Nazarovich Bubka and Vasily Nazarovich Bubka can pose a threat to national security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Ukraine and promote terrorist activities. In addition to medals and victories in sports, Sergei Bubka has the title of Hero of Ukraine. Now, it's very interesting that this has happened with Bubka, that the head of the National Olympic Committee has ties to Russia. Bubka previously was a member of the International Athletics Association. It is certainly interesting to see what will happen as the 2024 Olympic Games approach with Russia and Ukraine, but it is rather interesting and telling that a former National Olympic Committee head has ties to selling fuel to the Russian military.